West.
Palm Island is a beautiful place. We live in the Great Barrier Reef. Over 3,100 Indigenous residents.
Uncle Cameron was coming down the road, just being happy-go-lucky.
He was in the custody of Senior Sergeant Christopher Hurley.
I tried to get a pulse, observed his eyes were fixed and he appeared to be cold to me.
Chris is a bigger person than most, but he's very caring.
He's the only copper been in my house.
A gentle giant, if you like.
Why did Cameron have a bruised jaw and a bruised forehead?
With his liver almost cleaved in two, an injury only able to be caused in a high-speed motor vehicle accident or an airplane crash.
Did you at any time strike him or punch him?
No, I did not.
She said to us, I'm sorry there's no evidence.
And there will be no prosecution.
Chris Hurley's done nothing wrong.
Fine officer. Acted quite properly.
He just tore everybody apart.
What chance do we have of any justice ever? Not only can a copper get away with murder, but the whole service come out proudly in support of that.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel here. It's Lavender here, and today I'm doing another true crime case. Today I'm doing the true crime case, the hate crime, discrimination murder of Cameron Mulrunji Doomadgee story. Sorry if I said that wrong. This story is about a man who was murdered in police custody, by a white police officer in Australia. So let's get started into this video. So I first actually came across this true crime case because I was doing research for my why we should abolish the police and why we should abolish, prisons video, and I just came across this when I was doing research. So I'm going to link the sources down in the description below. So yeah, let's get started into this video. So yeah. So this case has been featured in a number of media and TV. It was featured in 2007, Tony Koch, the Australia's chief reporter in Queensland, won the Graham Perkin Australian Journalist of the Year Award for his coverage of the 2004 Palm Island death and custody and related events. In 2007, Brisbane-based band Powderfinger wrote a song, Black Tears, which mentioned the Palm Island death and custody by the words, "An island, watch house bed, a black man's lying dead." The song was to be released as part of their 2007 album, Dream Days at the Hotel Existence. They changed the lyrics of the song before releasing the album due to some controversies and how people on the case were trying to get the song banned. In 2008, journalist and novelist Chloe Hopper published the book The Tall Man, Death and Life on Palm Island, which won multiple awards in 2009. In 2010, artist Vernon and Cack created 4-screen video installation at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Sydney entitled Tall Man. In 2012, filmmaker Tony Crowes won the Walkie Foundation Long-Term Journalism Documentary Award for his documentary film based on Hooper's book titled The Tall Man. So let's get started into the story. So here we go, the story. Perhaps the most obvious way of thinking about the violence of incarcerated people relates to those cases where individuals are violently assaulted and killed. Deaths in custody have been a major issue for Indigenous people in Australia and all over the world, and were the subject of an exclusive royal commission in the latter part of the 1980s and early 1990s. Because there are serious alarm bells ringing among the Aboriginal communities across Australia in general. These included a particular deaths of 2 people in particular. John Pratt in Western Australia, he was kicked to death by a police officer after a pub brawl. And Eddie Murrah in New South Wales, he was picked up by a police officer for public drunkenness, and he died and was found hanging from a police cell. In a jail cell. Situations where Indigenous people are killed by police and correctional authorities whilst in custody, as compared to being killed while being taken into or escaping from custody, are undoubtedly the most controversial of deaths. One of the most recent and notorious cases in Australia involves 36-year-old Cameron, who died in police custody on Palm Island in November 2004. Palm Island is a major Indigenous Aboriginal community near Townsville in Queensland, Australia. He was arrested for being drunk and disorderly behavior. He was a healthy man who was arrested, was not known as a troublemaker, and he was described to be a big, teddy bear, and had not been previously arrested on Palm Island. The postpartum examination revealed that he suffered 4 broken ribs, a ruptured spleen, and that his liver was almost completely severed in half. And 2, a riot occurred on the island after the release of the autopsy results. During the riot, the police station and local courthouse were burned down and destroyed. The community's anger over the death of this man was vindicated by the coroner's report into the death, which was released in September 2006. Coroner Clemens found that he had punched the police officer Harley after being arrested and transported to the police station, and that the police officer had punched the guy in response back. Both men fell to the ground, and Harley lost his temper at the situation and hit Marley several times after falling to the floor. I conclude that these actions of Senior Sergeant Hurley caused the fatal injuries. After being beaten, he was dragged away back to his cell and deposited in police cells. According to the coroner, there was no attempt whatsoever to check on the injuries that the guy had sustained or his overall health after the fall. No attempt at resuscitation was ever made by any police officer in the area at the police station, even when there was a degree of uncertainty about whether the victim had died. The coroner found that the decision to arrest him in the first place, in the first incident for drunk and disorderly conduct, was inappropriate use of police discretion and could easily have been addressed by means other than arrest. In other words, the victim should have never been in police custody to begin with or in the first place. The coroner was critical of the failure to check on the health of the man that died after the fall and assault by the police officer. Mulrunji cried for help from the cell after being fatally injured, and no one came to help him, not one police officer, nobody. They just ignored him. The images from the cell videotape of the victim writhing in pain on the floor as he lay dying on the cell floor was shockingly and terribly distressing to the family and anyone who sat through the portion of the evidence. The sounds from the cell surveillance tape are unlikely to be forgotten by anyone who was in the court and heard that tape played. There is clear evidence that this must have been able to be heard from the police station day room where the monitor is running. Indeed, the timing of the Senior Sergeant Hurley's visit to the cell suggests that the sounds were heard, but no one came or did anything. There's no proper review of his injuries or the victim's injuries or a call for medical attention. There was no attempts made on that. The inspections of cursory and dangerous, even had Mulrunji been merely intoxicated. The so-called arousal technique of nudging Mulrunji with a foot is not appropriate. It cannot be sanctioned. The coroner was highly critical of the investigation, which failed to meet the standards of thoroughness. One investigating officer was a friend of the Sergeant Harley who, assaulted the guy. To begin with, the police officer most likely to be under investigation, and both investigating officers visited Hurley's house after dinner after the investigation had begun, adding to the community's view of a cover-up in the making over the killing was in fact that the sister of the victim had visited the police station bringing lunch to him. At this time, he was known by the police to be dead, but she was never notified that he was dead. She was simply told to go away. The family were not informed of his death until 4 hours after the fact, after the murder had occurred. And after it had occurred, the death of him is really a worst case example of someone who should have never been in police custody to begin with in the first place, who is then beaten by a police officer and authorities and is simply left to die because no one cared about him because he was indigenous. At the time of writhing, the matter had been referred to the Director of Public Prosecutions to make a decision on bringing criminal charges against the police responsible for the death. Palm Island resident Lex Watson was there when Mr. Dominguez was picked up by the police and would go on to serve 2 years of a 7-year prison sentence for inciting the violence and the riots and burning down the courthouse and the police station. I'd still do what I did then, he said. It was about making a statement, a political statement. I don't regret my actions at all. It cost me not only my liberty, but also the suffering of my family. I know they went through a lot. Sergeant Hurley became the first police officer in recent Australian history to stand trial over death in custody. He was later acquitted of manslaughter, prompting further outrage from the Indigenous Aboriginal community. Within a month of Dominguez's death, Hurley was transferred to the Gold Coast, where he medically retired in 2017 following a string of charges including assault and dangerous driving. In 2010, Hurley was forced to repay $34,980 in insurance payments after allegations of insurance fraud following the 2004 riot. Chris Hurley faced disciplinary actions after being transferred to the Gold Coast, including for assaulting a motorist in November 2013. Hurley mistakenly believed a passing motorist had insulted him and gave chase, driving erratically before grabbing the man by the throat. Dangerous driving, in which shots were allegedly fired in a getaway car. Hurley allegedly had fired his gun twice during the wild chase, despite being instructed multiple times to terminate the pursuit. He was also assaulting a female colleague in February 2016. Hurley had allegedly grabbed and dragged the woman at a local shopping center, swearing at her over a private matter. A damning 2016 federal court ruling found the Queensland Police breached the Racial Discrimination Act with its investigation into the death and subsequent unrest on the island where all this chaos occurred. The judgment summary read, officers broke into houses with assault rifles raised, confronting unarmed men, women, and children, like colonizers that they are. This year, hundreds of Palm Islanders affected by the events received compensation as part of a $30 million state government class action lawsuit settlement. In November 2020, his memorial was moved to the garden of his sister as it was getting vandalized by children in its earlier location just before the anniversary of this guy's death. So if you guys like this video, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Bye guys, thanks.